Hello and welcome to another edition of the Daily Record Off the Record podcast with me, David McCarthy and Keith Jackson, as we speak to some of the biggest names behind some of the biggest stories in Scottish football over the years. Today we are delighted to be in the company of a man who has a Champions League winners medal in his collection, but as far as Celtic fans are concerned, will be best loved for the part he played in stopping Rangers winning 10 in a row 25 years ago this summer. 5 years after that, he captained Martin O'Neill's side to the final of the UEFA Cup. And while that adventure ended in heartache in Seville, he ended his time at Parkhead with 4 Premier League titles, 2 League Cups and 3 Scottish Cups, one of which was won with St Mirren at the age of 17. Oh, and there were 40 Scotland caps and an induction into the SFA's Hall of Fame thrown into the mix as well. Welcome to our guest, Paul Lambert. It wasn't a bad old career, Paul, was it?
I'd have took it. It was lovely, really, when you look back on it and how it kind of transpires and how your career kind of goes. You've a lot of ups and downs in that period. You probably forgot all the downsides of that as well in there somewhere. So it's hard work, football, David. You know, it is hard. It is hard going. You need a lot of luck on your side when you get scouted. I think I get scouted when I was 12, and with St Mirren. At that point, and St Mirren at that time was a brilliant club because it gave me an incredible grounding at that time. It really, and I was really fortunate. I played under Alec Miller, Martin Ferguson, Drew Jarvie. I always say that, and the dressing room I grew up with was ridiculously tough, and I'm not saying in a bad way, but it made you battle hardened to what was going to come 10, 20 years down the line.
Aye, absolutely. I mean, you got there, your first taste of success when you were 17, as I just said there, winning that Scottish Cup. And I suppose at that age, you're kind of just, it's kind of unbelievable because you're no longer at school and suddenly you've got a Scottish Cup winners medal. And, that was a great start for you. But then you went to Motherwell and, that was a decent career there. But it's after that, what happened next is absolute fairy tale stuff, is it not?
Well, I was going to say, Paul, I mean, in the history of football, who has ever done St Mirren to Motherwell, Motherwell to Dortmund? Didn't happen. It's not supposed to happen.
No, it's going back to the point there with the St Mirren thing. When I was 17 and Alec Miller had left, and that was a right blow to me, that, because he kept me on the straight and narrow and kept everybody quite clued in. And when he left, I thought, dear oh dear, what happens here? Because that was my real first managerial change. And then Alex Smith came in and then kept me going in the team. And I think someone were going to play Rangers at Ibrox on the very last day of the season. And Alec came round and said, listen, I'm not going to play against Rangers at Ibrox. I'm going to play in the cup final. And you're right, David, at 17, I just went out there and played if I was still playing street football. I never realised what it was, what I was doing, and it wasn't. It's funny enough, and my dad. He said to me after the game outside Hampden, I'll never forget it. He said he's more emotional than me. I just thought it's another game, it's another whatever it was, and he said you won't realise what you've done till you're older, and that always stuck with me. My dad saying that to us, and then go to Motherwell, and I played in a really, really good side. 3 years, I had a great time there, and then obviously, the big one happened, and going to join Borussia Dortmund at that time.
Tell us, Paul, how did that come around, right? Because as you said, some young kids managed to get to a cup final at 17, maybe even win a cup at 17. Perhaps think it's going to be like that every season for the rest of their careers, but a lot of them that'll be their only taste of it. So for you to then progress and go up the levels that you then go up, I'm very curious to know at what point when you're at Motherwell do you get the idea this Dortmund thing could be real? I could be going to Borussia Dortmund. How did that all come about? And did you find it even difficult to believe yourself at the time?
Keith, I remember Motherwell were going to Northampton. I probably shouldn't say this kind of story, but they were going to Northampton on pre-season, and I remember Rab McKinnon, who was a really good player at the time at Motherwell. Rab signed for 20 Enschede,
Mm-hmm.
And I always kept in touch with him. And I remember saying to him, I said, how did that move come around? He went, a Dutch agent, got in touch with him, and God rest him, he died not that long ago. Ton van Dalen, his name was. And
yeah.
Do you remember him? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, "Do you want me to give him a call?" I said, that'd be great. No, listen, I didn't know Ton van Dalen from Adam really, so he phoned me roughly about the time Motherwell were going to Northampton. So I thought, how am I going to get out of this Northampton trip without Big Alec McTeish was the manager? And looking back, I shouldn't have done this, but I did it. And Motherwell went to Northampton, so I thought, the way I can only get out of this is pull a sickie. So I carried on, I wasn't well. And
was that a pre-season game, Paul?
It was, yeah, they were going down to England for pre-season. But I knew Ton was going to roughly phone, or well, I thought he was going to phone around about that time, so I thought, if I'm ready to go somewhere abroad, then I need to be ready to pull out of the Motherwell thing. Because I made up my mind I'd wanted to leave and I wanted to go abroad, but Ton phoned me at that time, says, "Paul, you can't go to Northampton. If you give me a few more days, I'll give you a call back." And I thought, all right, let's see where he goes with this. And sure enough, he phoned me and he said, "Listen," he said, "jump in the plane, fly to Enschede, and then I'll meet you." I'd never met this guy. I'd never seen this guy before in my life. And sure enough, Motherwell went to Northampton. I pulled the quick one, said I wasn't well, and jumped in a plane and got to Enschede. And I know it's crazy, and I jumped in a plane and Ton standing there, and I just remember this guy standing there, and he knew me from before. So he came up and says, "Paul, I'm Ton van Dalen." He said, "My car's here." He said, "You got everything?" I went, "Yeah." I still never knew where I was going at that point. And he got in the car and he says, "There's two teams." It was in the car, I think he said it. Or it was on the phone, he said, "There's two teams. One's PSV Eindhoven and one's Borussia Dortmund." And I went, "Oh, Jesus." Listen, as I said before, I thought he could have went to Azerbaijan, and I took the chance at that time because I thought, well, I've killed myself at Motherwell. I ain't going to play there again. I've took a sickie. I'm definitely not playing there again. This is the last throw of the dice. And jumped in the car, and Ton took me to Eindhoven. And Dick was the manager. Dick Advocat was the coach, and he welcomed me there. And at that time, Keith, PSV Eindhoven had a right good side.
Yeah, they were great.
They were a right good side there, and Dick played him on the right wing, and I was never quick. I was never a great technical 1v1 situations where I could get the byline and whip a ball in or cross balls. But anyway, he played me there, and ironically enough, I scored 2 goals in 2 games. But I was never a winger, and I knew it was only when Dick came to Rangers I thought, this guy will go with wingers here, because I know how he played at PSV.
Yeah.
And Kinchelskis and that were in the team at Rangers at that time. So I knew he wanted fast wingers. And he came up to my room, he says, "Paul," he said, "I know you're going to Borussia Dortmund." He said, "Good luck to you." I jumped in the car with Ton. We travelled 2 and a bit hours up to Dortmund. And we met Mr. Meyer at the time. And Ton and Mr. Meyer had done my contract within about half an hour. And I'm sitting there having a clue what these guys are saying because they're talking in German. and this is true. And we go out the room and Ton says, "Listen, there's 4 trial games for you here." He says, "The contract, that's the contract. If you do well, that's it, it's done. If you don't, then it's probably go back with your tail between your legs," sort of thing. And that was, I think that was the last.
Did you have a look at the contract at that point, Paul?
I knew what it was. But
your eyes must have popped out your head.
Do you know what? The funny thing was, right? It could have been 3 iron blues and a mojo, and if I signed it, I knew I was going to get a chance with them, because what I had in my head was, do you know what? I need to try and sign here and see if I don't play here. I want to learn something different.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I knew the team that they had, because we played against them in Motherwell.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew the big ones were there. I knew the stadium. I knew the fan base. And when it happened, I drove. Well, Walter Mass, who I know really well now, and we had a laugh about this a few months ago. Walter drove me to a place called Lübeck. he couldn't speak German. He could speak German, no English. I knew English, no German. So the conversation was like, talk with your hands. And I thought, what am I going to do here? How am I going to speak to this guy? And I said to them, I said, what? I said, and I pointed at my watch, how long driving sort of thing. And he put his hands up and put 4 fingers up. I went, 4? He went, 4 hours. He says, don't worry, I'll do it in 2. And he flew down that autobahn. It was ridiculous. And Walt was only about 3'6". He was tiny. And I went, Jesus, this guy's driving this car like an absolute maniac. Anyway, we got there. And I'll never forget this. We went to the airport and all I could see was black and yellow. That's what I seen. I went, what the hell? There's thousands of fans at the airport in Lübeck. Next thing I see a plane coming in. And he went, there's a plane. That's a team coming in from Switzerland. And the plane went on the tarmac. Walter drives on the tarmac. And then Otmar and Michael Henke come off the bus and introduce ourselves and say, hope it goes well for you. Just go on the bus. And then I go on the bus and a lot of the guys are sitting there. Some of them weren't there because they just won Euro 96, so they had a bit more extra time off. And I played 245 minutes against Lübeck in Hamburg. It was my first trial game, but I played centre of the pitch then. And then my next 2 games were Schalke and Gladbach at that time, which were big games in a cup competition before the season started. And then I done well in them, but I played centre midfield. And then on the Thursday before the season started against Bayer Leverkusen, Otmar says to me, we've just signed Pablo Sosa from Juventus. He says, so if Pablo's fit, you're on the bench against Leverkusen and Pablo plays. Pablo ended up, his knee wasn't ready to play. I play against Leverkusen and then boom, away it goes. And that's exactly how it happened.
That's right, because I remember, Paul, that, and obviously you remember that for your first home game against Fortuna Düsseldorf, I came over with your dad.
You were over, yeah.
Aye, and so we came to watch your first game in the Westfalen, and I remember you saying to us after that game that what made you feel that you had a real chance there was that Hitzfeld made 3 substitutions that night. And you weren't one of them. You stayed on the pitch for the entire 90 minutes, and there was some big names getting weak. I mean, you won the game 4-0.
That's right.
And I remember you always saying that to us, that was where you really began to believe, look, he believes in me. He's kept me on for the entire 90 minutes amongst this team full of superstars.
David, that was it. And I remember that. See that point you're talking about? Cala and Paolo come off the bench that night. Right, and I had one of the games that kind of just seems to everything went for me that night. The game just went really well for me. And Carla and Paolo came off the bench that night, and when I looked over and my number wasn't up, that's when I actually said to myself, stronger words in one brain. I actually turned it. I need to kill people to stay in this team because look who's coming off the bench. And that was my mindset of, once I'm in here, if I get this team, I ain't getting back in. I thought to myself, look at this dressing room. They'd won World Cups, they'd won Serie A titles, Champions League titles. And I thought then, at that point, I thought, Jesus, I'm going to have to perform at the highest level I possibly can to stay in this side because look at that, it's too good. And that was my mindset. And from that game on, that's when it really escalated into something that was a ridiculous story, really.
Talk to us, Paul, about what that required from you in terms of mental strength, mental belief, self-conviction, because there's got to be a bit of you that arrives there. As you said, you're looking around, you know everybody in that dressing room. There's hundreds of pounds falling out their pockets when they go to pick up their kit bag. You're in with absolute superstars. You just come from home. How much were you absolutely dependent then on a cast iron sort of mental strength? Because that would have, I'm sure a lot of people in that situation would have struggled with that, Paul. So
that's a good point. I got to the point where we needed money. at that point, and I thought, what am I going to do here? I need to go abroad, let's see what happens. But I need to get an income here, because Scottish football at that time was paying good money to what probably normal other people get. So the disparity in inflation, all that. But at that time, if I played in Motherwell, what was on probably till now to end my career, I'd have still had to go and work after my career. So I'm not saying I don't want to work, but what I'm saying is that you've got, it's a really short career, and but my mindset was, all right, I have to get money here. So we were at that time asked my mum and dad to help me out a wee bit because I was struggling, and I thought, and the big thing was when I went over to Dortmund, I never forget this. I had no money at all. I'd run out of money, and Mr. Meyer said to me, he said, Paul, he said, I said, Mr. Meyer, I said, you're asking me to stay on here. I said, but I've got no money. He went, don't worry, he said, I'll give you 200 Deutschmarks. If you sign, you give me it back, and if you don't sign, just take it. So I went, right, okay. So I had no deodorant, shampoo, all the quality stuff, right? This is true. And so I go to the Dortmund training ground, and Julio was there. The coolest Brazilian I've ever seen and played with. This guy. This guy played with a suit on, and never broke sweat. It was ridiculous. Honestly, and the ball, it was that big. The ball was like a tennis ball in his foot, and I thought, Jesus, this guy's an absolute mountain of a guy. What is that? But you know what, Keith, David? He smelled fucking brilliant. Honestly, his aftershave was fucking brilliant. So I thought, fucking, this big guy's an icon. He used to come in with a suit on, fucking do his hair and all that. He would just look at me in the morning and go, Paul, bis morgen, which meant I'll see you tomorrow. So, but I laugh with Julio now because I know him really well. But I was trying to explain to Julio, I don't have any deodorant. He went, Paul, don't worry, come with me. This is true, right? So he takes me to Dortmund City Centre. He said, what do you need? What do you need? I went, I need a soap bag, I need shower gel, I need aftershave, I need shaving cream. He went, don't worry. I swear to God, he bought me stuff, right? I swear it came to about €400. I threw the checkout. I never had the heart to say to him, do you have only get 200? So I can't afford it. Fucking, so he paid for it. He went like, I said, no, don't worry, I pay for you. He said, don't worry, I get it. So he got me that. So that's how bad it was. I was like, I can't afford it in here. So everything was kind of going. So that I thought, right, okay, that's step one over. How do I actually get involved with this? And how do I get my mindset back to your question? How do I get my mindset? Yeah. And the great thing about Dortmund was it was really similar to Glasgow, where I knew if I'd worked my arse off, would the crowd go with it? Might not be good enough at that point. They might want it seen better, or they might want it seen something a bit more flair or a bit more guile. But what I gave them was the other side of I'll go right in about it here, and I'll go for everything for you. And then they just took to me like a fish to water, really. So the mindset was the Dusseldorf game was Paolo and Carla come off the bench, and I need to play well here to stay on this side. I said, because the team's that good. The mindset of winning, the fear of losing was really high with me all the time. It was the fear of losing of, I don't want to lose here. I don't want to lose. And I knew they had to win titles, Dortmund. I knew they had to win, whether it was the Champions League or the League or the German Cup. I knew the club was that big. It was a club that it had to win because of the team it had. So that gave me the grounding of probably the Glasgow upbringing on my own, St Mirren upbringing or the St Mirren dressing room upbringing of being a pro footballer, how it kind of works. And I fitted in the Dortmund dressing room really good. And one of the biggest, I think, compliments I ever had was from Andy Muller, who was probably the greatest player I think I ever played with, Andy, but offensively. And Andy said to me one day, he said that he wouldn't have been the same kind of player if I never had his back, really.
Wow.
Which was great. And I thought at the end, I must be doing something right here. So my mindset was always, even if I win something, I've never got too high, and if I've never lose, I always try to be humble with it, and I don't need to broadcast what I've done or anything like that, because it's your memory that gives you the medal, really. And I think the mindset was, now's the time to really see how good I can be with that, and that just, that club and that lifestyle and that winning and all that was like, it put you up there that I could handle any company. Didn't matter who I was up against. I could handle any opponent that I come up against.
Sorry, Keith, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, is there a wee bit about that where you actually have to bluff as well? When you get Andy Muller, as you said, it was hardly short of confidence. None of these guys are short of confidence. Yeah. So can you feel yourself, I need to walk into this room and not let them see that I'm actually shitting myself a little bit here?
Yeah, 100%. That of, was it ever going to be good enough? In their eyes, I had to earn probably their respect of, can I do it? And the really nice thing now is when I meet all the guys, they always really warm to you because of the way I was as a personality and the way I was in a dressing room. And I was always up there, sort of. I was never kind of down, do you know what I mean? I was always kind of up there all the time. Like, they knew what they were going to get, and they knew if I was bang at it, then I'd have been hard to play against. Because training was like that, Keith, training was like the way you played.
Yeah.
And Jurgen Kohler, who Matthias Sammer and Julio and Martin Cree, people like that, they were incredible defenders. I'd never seen anything like that or played with anything like that with the guys at the back of me. They were just ridiculously good. And that gave you the mindset of winning. The German mentality was always winning. Didn't matter, see if we won 1-0. After the game, it wouldn't matter how you really kind of played. Brilliant, well done, move on. Yeah. Next one, move on. That was their mentality, and I thought, if that's good enough for them, then I need to have that. Because I always used to, Motherwell, if I lost a game, it would stay with me for about 4 days. I was like, fucking hell, I can't shake this. But I got to the point where at Dortmund that I would win, bump, let it go. I would lose, you analyse it for a day, bump, let it go. And I seen Otmar Hitzfeld when he was manager of Switzerland. I went over to see him and asked him the same question. I said, how did you ever handle a defeat? Not that he lost fucking too many. So he went, Paul, analyse it for 1 day. He said, then let it go. He said, because it'll kill you and it'll kill your team. And then I thought, it's really good advice, that,
Aye, that's great advice. Tell us this, in that run to the final, you obviously had Man United in the semi-final. I think the second leg was Old Trafford, so he's qualified at Old Trafford, and then you've got to the final. Having beaten Man United, and I know you've still got Juventus, who only had Deschamps and Zidane and all that in the final, right? But having beaten Man United, did you go into that game with a genuine belief that you could win it? Obviously, the match was also played in Germany, which was probably a good thing as well for you.
The Man United game was really strange there because we had a hell of a lot of injuries in that first leg. If you look at the team, it was really not as strong as what the final team was, sort of thing. And obviously, we beat Man United 1-0 at Dortmund. And the mindset of the guys, the German way was, we've got that goal advantage. We always score away from home. There's very rarely, I don't think we scored away from home, and because of the players that we had. So the Man United game at 1-0, there was an incredible relief that if we scored at Old Trafford, they ain't scoring 3 against us. And Lars scores the goal at Old Trafford. Even though Man United had chances, I always think there's a bit of anxiety when you miss and miss. There's anxiety there because you're chasing that. You've got to score 3 against us. And there's no way in this earth Man United were ever going to score 3. No way. Jurgen Kohler was a one-man wall that night. that was probably the best defensive thing I've ever seen for a guy. He was just ridiculous, Jurgen, at that point. And that game, when Lars scores, I never felt threatened there because I just knew that Man United were going to score 3 against us at that night. They just wouldn't do it.
I think your biggest problem that night might have been when you were, drive up the road and you get caught speeding or something.
Aye, the guy, I never had a car seat, a baby car seat.
Is that what it was?
And they pulled me over, and the traffic officer, because I think Scotland had a game. That's right. You were going on to Scotland, yeah. Aye, and the guy pulled me over, and he looked at me and went, "Did you Paul Lambert?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "You played that game last night, didn't you?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "Brilliant." He said, "I'm a Manchester City fan." He said, "I'll take you to Halfords to get a car seat." He was brilliant. I said, "I don't know where I'm going here." I said, "I don't know where I'm going." He said, "Follow me, don't worry about it." And then he took me to Maybe I could get a car seat. I'm a Man City fan. Well done. Let's go.
Absolutely mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us about the final then. We're going to get on to Celtic in a minute, obviously, but tell us about the final, because, you know, not only are you kind of tasked with keeping Zidane quiet because he's in your area of the pitch, but you also still managed to create the first goal. You get the assist for the first goal, didn't you?
Otmar would get. Otmar told me what kind of player like Zidane was like, you know. But the big thing with Zinedine Zidane is, and I've met him since the final, and was the height of him and how big he was. I never. He must have been about 6'3".
Yeah.
And I think, Jesus, this guy really tall, sort of thing. But he had a couple of great things. He had a brilliant thing of drifting off your shoulder at certain times. If the ball was on the right hand side, for example, he would drift off your shoulder, and I always thought to myself, I can't get attracted to the ball, or Juventus are that good, they'll find him. And then when he gets a chance, he normally scores. And he was really two-footed. He could sway one way and go to the left, and it was just brilliant the way he swayed. And it was the height of him, and how I had to be bang on it really to go, well, if Zidane wants to go there, then I'll need to go with him, because it's too dangerous to let him have the freedom. And their team, you're right, when you look at their team, the manager they had, Lippi at the time, and the team that they did have, and Del Piero came on, Del Piero was a sub that night, you think, because Bossy can vary up front with Zidane floating behind and things like that. So when you look at the team they had, you thought, we're going to have to be really bang on it. But back to your point, David, I just had a feeling that we would win, because I think that whoever beat Borussia Dortmund at that time had to be an incredible team to beat us, because I thought the Dortmund team was an incredible side. And with the firepower that Dortmund had, built with Shapi, Kala, Rolandi, there was always goals in the team. And I always felt that we could score. But the night in Munich, I mean, my God, the atmosphere that night and the build-up to that game, the whole thing was huge for us. And it was brilliant it was in Germany, and it was brilliant that we had a massive party when we went back home.
Did you have nerves, Paul? Tell the truth. Because I can imagine there's going to be 3 or 4 guys, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys in that dressing room that probably didn't feel nerves, or if they did, they never show it. Yeah. Did you have nerves? Did you suffer? Or by this point, have you bought into this German mentality, this utter belief that, you know, and maybe it's a touch of arrogance, but it's something that doesn't come naturally to Scottish guys? Yeah,
no, you're right. I point one, I was no nervous, right? 100%. I had what they had at that time, because I got that feeling how they'd done it. So totally fine. I knew how big the game was. I knew the build-up of it. I knew everything that was going on. And it wasn't until I went to the bus to put my bag under the bus. And I'll never forget this. This was incredible. And Manny, Manny, who used to clean our boots and that and sort out our mail for us and all that, and things like that, he went and he lit up his cigarette outside the bus, you know, and he went, "Paul, how are you?" I went, "Manny, I'm ready. I'm ready to go." I went, "How are you?" He went, "Paul, I'm nervous." As soon as he said that, my fell out my trousers at that point. Manny, I didn't want to hear that, but it was affecting people that more than it was affecting me, because they were embroiled in the club where they'd been there for years and years and years, and he was our kind of guy that cleaned the boots and things like that. Manny, a brilliant guy, and done our mail every morning, made you coffee in the morning. Just a real brilliant person to have about the dressing room, the training ground. And he went, he was nervous, and I went, fucking hell, he's nervous.
That puts responsibility on you, doesn't it? Because now you're playing for
100%. And I'm on the bus, and my seat was always next to Stefan Kloss, who you guys know really well. And the bus was deadly silent, you know, really quiet. And I walked up there, and I was sat at the back of the bus with Stefan and that. And I see Jurgen, I see Andy, I see Kala. And all the guys are sitting with taste, deadly quiet. And I looked, and Stefan said, "How are you?" I went, "No, I'm fine, Stefan," until Manny says he's nervous. And I just happened to look down at Stefan's knee, and his knee's going up and down. You know that if you're under the table, your knee's going up and down. I went, are you all right? He went, aye, I'm all right. I'm fine. He said, but look at everybody else. And when the bus is quiet. And I went, Jesus, look, they're bang on it here because nobody spoke on the bus. It was really quiet. It was so concentrated on. And I'm thinking, and I'll never forget, I thought to myself, he's won the World Cup. He's won Serie A. He's won the Bundesliga. And they're like that. Do you know what I mean? And that's guys, going back to your point, they'd won everything, but they were so bang on it. Right, the manager, nobody spoke. And the only time that Otmar really spoke was really in the dress. Once we got to the dressing room, it became a bit lively because the way the bus parked in Munich was in the corner flag. So you walked onto the track, and by the time we got into that track, that stadium was full, half black and white, half yellow black, and I went, look at this. The flags were going. It was just that's when it became proper. I thought, this is brilliant. And I'll never forget walking by the trophy when it stands on the plinth. I thought, say God, if there's one trophy you need to give me, it's this one here. Again, forget everything else. I just take this one.
You can't get that close to it and not take it away. That would just be.
It must have been. Do you know what? To lose that tournament, thank God I never lost it. It must be a horrific thing because everybody wants it. Aye, everybody wants it. It was a great thing. I read in the programme because they had the Cup Winners' Cup at that time, UEFA Cup and the Champions League. I think the Champions League cost the least amount of money to make, but teams spend the most amount of money trying to buy it. Try to win it. And I thought, God almighty, that's so true. That.
So tell us this then, Paul. Right, so you've won that. You've reached the peak there. You could obviously have stayed on in Dortmund.
Yeah. What
made you, like, a few months later, really? I think November '98. So it's about a year later, wasn't it? It was, you're back in Glasgow. Was that a kind of family decision at the time, or whatever, or was it a career decision that you had done what you wanted to do in Germany and it was time to come back?
No, I was really happy. Dortmund was I had an incredible relationship with the support and the club, and even when I go back to this day, everybody's really welcoming and really nice and all that. And after the Champions League final, I had the option to go anywhere in Europe, anywhere. I had teams phoning, come here. It was incredible. And my answer to it all the time was no, I'm really happy. This club have gave me what I have today. I'm really happy here. I don't need to move. And then it became a point where my son wasn't keeping too good. And he had a thing called, I think it was a thing called febrile convulsions. I think that's what it was called, where a kid at that age, from 1 to 5, can go unconscious with a temperature when it gets too high. Right. And this was happening more and more frequently. And I thought, this is getting bloody difficult. For me, it's easy because I'm training and I'm playing. But for the family side, it becomes difficult. So Celtic came in and Vim, God rest him, bloody hell. Scotland played Belarus. Remember that up at Aberdeen? And Celtic asked me a few times. I says no to Celtic as well at the beginning. He said, no, I'm happy. Thanks very much. And then Vim and Murdo appeared like a ghost in the boot room at Aberdeen. I don't know how they got there, but they got there. And Vim said, "Will you give me one more chance to try and sign you? I want to sign you." And I went, "No, listen, I've got a game for Scotland here in the World Cup." He said, "No." He said, "I appreciate that." He said, "But I want to try and sign you at Celtic." And I said, "Listen, you have to do what you do, and I go and do what I do," sort of thing. And I left it with Celtic at that point. I never really bothered. Played the game. Scotland won 4-1. Back to Dortmund. Everything's fine. No problem. And then Dortmund did a chat with me and asked, "Listen, Celtic, we know the problem here with your son and that, and we'll do everything for you." I mean, that's no. I don't want you to do everything for me. I'm here to work for you. You don't work for me. I'm here to work for you. But my job is to try and win football matches and try and make the club successful. So I didn't want the club to pander to me. I was never that big a player for that. I was never that good enough for that. I wanted to be one of them. And they got to the point where we said, okay, it's getting too much now that my son keeps conking out at certain points in his life, and I thought, this is too difficult. Let's go home. And then the Celtic thing transpired, and all of a sudden it happened quickly. But I never realised that the send off I'd have got at Dortmund, David. What I got, that was ridiculous what happened there, because I never expected that send off, because I had people crying in the stadium or at my car, and people putting banners over my car saying don't go, and it was just really, really tough moment. And that's why I probably never kicked my backside at Celtic for a couple of months after I signed with them.
Did you genuinely think that? Was your head still in, or your head or your heart still in Dortmund at that time, although you were physically in Glasgow, do you think? 100%.
100%. That was it. But I could have signed for anywhere, Juve or whatever it was. I'd have the same feeling. What have I done here? What have I done? I ain't performing to the level that I know I could have done. And it wasn't fair in Celtic at that point either, because I wasn't performing. They probably only seen a guy who won the Champions League and expect go on the team, you just play. No matter how hard I played or how, it just wasn't happening. And I went to Vim the night Celtic won the League Cup. We went to Cameron House, and I went to see Vim that night, the night before the game. Mm-hmm. And he hadn't picked the team, and I went to see him. I said, "You got him?" And he went, "Yeah." He said, "I said, if you're thinking about playing me anymore, don't play me in this cup final." I said, "I ain't performing." I said, play Morton and Craig. I said, they're the ones that are performing, and they're the ones that are going to there. I said, I'll find my feet, but you need to give me time here, because I ain't performing for you. And he went, "Okay, Paul, thanks very much. I'll decide what I want to do." And he never played me, which was the right call, 100% the right call. You came off the bench that day, didn't you? Sorry?
I'm saying you came off the bench that day, I think.
Right, yeah. Which was a total gesture. It's about 3.5 seconds to go or something. So, it was the right call.
What was it like getting into that dressing room at that particular time, though? Because the pressure to stop Rangers getting 10 in a row must have been absolutely astronomical.
Do you know what? Going back to Keith's thing, I loved that. Absolutely loved that pressure. I loved that feeling of you've got to do it. There's no grey area there, the 10 in a row thing. There was never a grey area. It was you either do it or you have to leave Glasgow in an armoured bus and get out, sort of thing. And because that was when I look back on it now, the 10 in a row thing, if you lost it, you'd have absolutely destroyed the Lisbon Lions legacy and Big Jock and all that, and all the guys, who I loved the Lions when I spoke to them. They were brilliant, and I know there's not too many left, but I loved their company, and I loved listening to all stories that they were great, and the great players that they were, and all that, in different eras, different times.
So Paul, were you getting that from some of the Lions as well then, that look, the current Celtic team, look, we did the 9 in a row, we did that, you've got to stop them from beating us, kind of thing? And was that something that the Lions were actually saying to you guys at the time?
No, do you know what? And that's a great thing, David. That was a brilliant thing about them. Not once did they say, "Paul, listen, you need to try and stop that 10 in a row." We Bertie, Jinky, go through them all. They were all brilliant. They never once put any pressure on. I never heard it. Never put any pressure on that team to say, "Listen." I knew myself in the back of my head what it was and where it was going, and how important it was to the club to win the 10 or to stop the 10 in a row. But also knew I was never ignorant to Celtic history, because I knew what that great team had done at that point. So I knew that this season was going to be to me, that season changed the whole thing, the way Celtic are today.
Yeah.
That's how big that season was. It changed. It gave Celtic a legacy, or it knew how to win again.
It was back. The foundations were built.
Yeah, 100%, Keith. And I think that team or that group of guys deserve an incredible thing for them, because what they've done. Because you're right, Keith. It gave them that foundation of, well, we can win again. We can get by Rangers at some point. We can do it, and but I never ever felt what I did feel for the Lions was great guys, great support, great storytellers, brilliant things that you would never ever repeat in your life, but brilliant, great fun, and but that team or that era had an incredible job to stop that 10 in a row.